Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, 4 weeks of famous philosophers. In this video we are going to be looking at David Hume, the Great Infidel, the Mighty Modern Skeptic, and the greatest Anglophone philosopher of all time. Now, David Hume is one of the most influential philosophers of all time, outranked only by such greats as Aristotle, Plato, and Kant. He was a famous skeptic, empiricist, and natural philosopher. Though some of his positive projects around his own epistemology and explanation of mind were considered less than successful, his skepticism of everything from religion and scholastic arguments to science and causation to the concept of self and the possibility of knowledge represent powerful criticisms to these institutions even to this day. Now, David Hume was born to what might be considered a middle-class family in 1711. Like many philosophers, he was destined for a career in law, but gained, in his own words, an aversion to everything but philosophy. He was a stubborn child, if that doesn't tell you, that refused to listen to his professors and dropped out without graduating. Though he wrote several influential and significant books throughout his lifetime, he struggled to hold a job through much of his early life, and he didn't really become financially stable until the success of his book, The History of England. And that gave him the stability and fame that he had always been seeking. He eventually went on to spend much of his later life just relaxing, spending time with friends, and of course revising his greatest works. His most controversial work, though, which was his work criticizing religion, was in fact published after he died at the advice of some of his friends. Now, Hume was famously skeptical of many different positions of the time, including the relatively new scientific method. Hume argued that induction, the method of making generalizations from individual cases, could not be deductively valid. If, for example, every swan you see is white, you cannot validly conclude that all swans are white. In order to make any such conclusion, you need the principle of the uniformity of nature, which basically states that the past will always be like the future, or the future will always be like the past. Basically, we can't know that all swans are going to be white if the future is drastically different. Maybe all swans are going to be square in the future. Maybe all swans are going to be green. Maybe they're going to be grue. We don't know. And the bigger problem is the only way to prove that principle is through induction itself. For more on this, check out my video on the problem of induction. Now, Hume was also skeptical of causality itself. He argued that causal relations could either be a priori relations, so on our reason alone between ideas, or a posteriori, things about experience, facts about the world. They cannot be a priori because we cannot know without experience, for example, that a sip of hemlock would cause a person to die. I can't just think about the concept of hemlock and the concept of person and understand that's what would happen. However, it is only through using induction, that we've already doubted, that one can take the facts of the world, namely, every time I feed someone hemlock, they die, and generalize from that a general rule about causality, that it is in fact the hemlock that's causing them to die. Because we can't use induction and we can't use a priori ideas, there's no way for us to define a notion of causality or defend our idea of causality. So Hume was skeptical of everything all the way down to even cause and effect. Now, Hume posthumously published his most controversial text challenging the ideas of religion. In the past, he had been challenged about being an atheist and being a heathen. But using his characters of Philo, Damia, and Cleanthes, Hume argued against the teleological argument for the existence of God and claimed that we should reject the idea of miracles. He wrote extensively and generally from a very skeptical perspective on basically every religious subject of the time. So the interesting thing is that Hume here was skeptical both of these ideas that we were being presented through religion and through these new philosophical arguments for the existence of God, but also the new scientific methods that were showing up that used induction. Therefore, I give you David Hume, the Great Infidel, the Mighty Modern Skeptic, and the greatest Anglophone philosopher of all time. Next up, we're going to be looking at Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and watch a new video every single day this whole month, and stay skeptical, everybody.